So again, my name is Val Walters, and I'm the Executive Director of the Ryan Bartel Foundation. And I am happy to have you with us this evening. I think this is a really important discussion, especially as it relates to teens' mental health. The Ryan Bartel Foundation is a youth suicide prevention organization in Loudoun County. A lot of people ask us, what do we do? I get that, what are your programs about? We're about building resilience in teens. And how do we do that? Well, we've got several programs. We've got the Fort, we've got our workshops, and those programs help create connection. They help build the confidence in teens. They help understand the power of generosity and giving back to the community. And they give teens coping skills that they can use in those inevitable moments of ups and downs in a teen's life. So that's a very high level view of what our workshops are about and our programs are about. So if your teens haven't checked them out, you can see all about the programs and upcoming workshops and forts on our website. Parent panels are one of our signature programs. We've been doing these for the past 2 years since COVID started. And we really just want to share resources. And we're lucky enough this evening to have Dr. Cam Caswell and Charlie Peck on as our speakers and panelists. So welcome, Charlie and Cam. We're really going to talk about dealing with those outbursts, the power struggles that happen, and how to best handle those stressful moments in our parenting lives. So without further ado, Cam, I will let you and Charlie take a few minutes to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Dr. Cameron Caswell, and I'm an adolescent psychologist and family success coach. I'm also the co-founder of Thriving School Community. And we are focused, Charlie and I are actually co-founders of that company, and our whole focus right now is student mental health. And so we're trying to find as many approaches. I work with families, I work with teens, and now we're going in and working with schools as well, trying to find a solution to this problem that just keeps getting worse and worse. And we're trying to figure out how to stop that.
Mm-hmm. Hi guys, I'm Charlie Peck. I was a high school teacher for 18 years, so I was there firsthand with these teens who were suffering, and so were their parents. And so I stepped out of the classroom to become a social worker so that I can understand what was happening from a clinical perspective and also a systemic perspective. So my lens is coming in as kind of the education lead for Thriving School. But I get it too. As a parent, I've been there as well. And I have 3 kids ranging from 9 on Saturday to 19, almost 19. So I've been there too, and I've been there with youth, and we just want to help you understand this better.
Well, thank you so much to you both. Let's jump in. As a parent myself, when we started these parental panels, it was really at the start of the pandemic, and we gave parents, advice on how to handle a pandemic. We didn't really have a point of reference, but now 2 years later, we're still kind of in this place. What's wrong with my kid? They're quiet. They're up in their rooms all the time. They're angry. They're having these behavioral issues that I hadn't seen before. So what do I do?
That's it? That's your question?
That's my question. What do I do?
Big question. I think I see a lot of concern and worry from parents, rightfully so. The pandemic was really scary. We went in a situation we've never been in. We're getting out of it now and kids are going back. And we thought, I think most of us, because I'm a mom too, most of us hoped, everything will go back to how it was. And it's not. A lot of these mental health issues that we became aware of during the pandemic are still there, right? And now they're going back in schools and they're showing social anxiety and they're having difficulty managing their emotions. And there's, interaction and just a lot of the kids are kind of breaking down. I've seen a lot of avoidance of school too, or just not wanting to go. I think the first thing to realize as a parent is that your child's going to be okay. So many are going. I talk to parents every day and they think, oh my gosh, my child's the only one going through this. They're not, unfortunately, but unfortunately for you, they're not. And there's always a reason underlying that behavior. And so looking at it separate from something's wrong with my teen and my child is coping with something this way. And so let's look at what are they coping with? What is it that they're struggling with? And then we can look at, okay, what are other ways we can help them cope?
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start with this because it is so loaded and parents really struggle with this. So I always say, do not parent in isolation. That's the worst place you can parent from. It's so hard to feel alone. So use all the resources you possibly can. And the way you do talk to yourself totally matters, right? It really does. And so one of the things I did in a clinical setting is I worked with teens who couldn't live at home successfully. There was a lot of conflict in their home. So they lived in residential treatment centers. So what we did is we equipped them, pulled them into it, right? It's not just on one person. It's never just on the parent or just on the kid. But what we did is we equipped them with some good tools, and we did a lot of psychoeducation. So we shared information with parents. So the more that you know, the more you can understand. There's a lot of brain-based reasons why teens do what they do and why they do it a little differently than even a 6-year-old would do it versus what you would do. It's totally brain-based. And there's a lot of influences they have. Think about all of these external, all these constraints they have in their life, and they're exposed to so many things that we didn't have exposure to. Social media, they might be getting teased or bullied, and you'll have no idea because the person who's doing it is anonymous and can remain anonymous. And so there's a lot that they're just trying to sort through. So that's the easy, quick answer. There's a lot more to say, of course.
Sure. So, at some point when you've got a teen who's struggling, you want to reach out for help. And usually, maybe you're reaching out to the schools or maybe you're reaching out to your pediatrician, but we know that that is difficult right now, especially finding mental health support. So, what are some steps that parents can take if they feel like they're not getting the support or if they need additional support to parent their teens? Where would you suggest they start?
Yeah. I always say go back to the school because you are sending your kid to the school every day, and they have to be an ally to you. They have to partner with you in this. And there's got to be a plan. There's got to be a safety plan. There's got to be discussions and good, strong communication without any finger pointing, without the judgment. It's about partnering with them. Unfortunately, a lot of parents don't feel like their school is very supportive of their needs. And I get that. I understand, trust me. So I say, continue to reach out to community resources. There are people out there who specialize. A lot of times kids and parents have no idea that there's a lot of mental health support out there. So go to places like go to the school does have resources. Sometimes you just have to ask for it. And reach out to family. A lot of times parents, when we're suffering, a lot of times we don't want to reach out to parents. To our family members. We don't want to be judged. We feel embarrassed. We think that we're failing at something. But we also need respite, and when we're constantly in this state of wonder of what's going on, right? And we're all at different stages, but reach out to family members with people you trust and love and get a little respite. Try to engage in some positive experiences so that it's not always doom and gloom of there's a mental health issue right now. Try to step out of that and think a little bit outside the box, but definitely reach out to other people for resources. They are there. We just have to dig sometimes. Go ahead, Cam. I know you have a ton of information.
No, I'm going to support what you're saying is reaching out to other people, because I get calls from people on a regular basis that are completely frustrated trying to find professional help. And it's true. The mental health the whole industry is influxed right now with people. And there's people like me and like Charlie and like the Ryan Bartel that are doing everything we can to make sure we're available to as many people as we can. But one thing I found is a lot of parents, and like I just mentioned, believe that they're in this struggle alone. And there's a lot, particularly when our kids are older, I think there is a little bit of guilt and even shame that is around this when we see our kids aren't behaving or struggling. Even like we sit there and we blame ourselves going, my child's anxious, what did I do wrong? And we feel bad about it. And I'm going to tell you, you are not alone. I get calls many, many calls a day about parents that are struggling with the same thing. And I've had groups of parents come together and they're always hesitant to talk and share. And when they start sharing stories, you can just see the look of relief on their face because they realize, oh my gosh, I am not alone. So telling you that, I want to give you permission to talk to friends, to talk to other people and find support that way without the guilt and shame, because I bet you if you bring it up with somebody else, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you too? Oh, thank God. And just knowing that you're not alone is so helpful. It's really helpful.
Thank you. Great advice. Creating community and having community support is really important. Again, in parenting, sometimes we have power struggles, and we need to we need to keep our teens. Teenage years are difficult, right? They're wanting to be independent. They're sort of pushing boundaries, and we want to keep them from making mistakes and keep them safe in our proverbial bubble. So, that mutual vulnerability, or, the power struggles that happens with teens. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that sometimes that creates issues for parents and for teens that can escalate quite quickly.
Yeah, it creates a lot of problems when kids get a little bit older. And I mean, it's, people are like, my child's 10 and it's happening, right? And we start seeing this power struggle. And what I see is that parents have this vision of what they want their kid, who they want their kid to be, what they want to teach their kid, what, they want them to succeed and do the best they can. And we have all these hopes and dreams for our kids, which of course we do. We need to do that, right? But what happens is when we see our kids maybe doing something that is not aligned with exactly our ideal of what we want them to be, we feel it's our place to go in and course correct. And when they get older, that course correction starts feeling like in acceptance. It starts feeling like criticism and judgment, and I'm not okay the way I am. And so you need to constantly be correcting me. So we as parents see it as helping, and our kids see it as controlling and not accepting. And when we do that, they start pulling away more and more. They start resenting us as parents. They start lying to us. They start hiding up in their rooms because they don't feel like they can be themselves in the space that we're in, because we're not accepting who they are and what they love. So my belief is when they get to that age, we need to take a step back and realize our kids are trying to figure out who they are. Who they are in this very moment is not who they're going to be when they're 44. You see a lot of parents going, well, if I don't stop this now, they're going to be like that forever. I can guarantee if you think back to how you were at 14, you are not the same, right? So they're in a phase where they're trying to figure out who they are. They're doing the best they can. I'm going to reiterate that. They are doing the very best they can in the circumstances they're in and with what they know. So give them the benefit of the doubt that they are trying. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to disappoint you. They are trying hard not to. And a lot of these kids feel like they're getting so much negative feedback because we're course correcting that they give up and they say, I don't care anymore. I can't do anything right. Why even bother? So we really want to say, you know what? They're trying really hard. Let's figure out how we can help them and set them up to succeed.
Yeah, so there's two things I'll add to that, because it's absolutely true. I mean, every single thing that Cam is saying is so true. What we do, so in our heads as parents, we're like, you know what? You shouldn't be talking to me like that. You shouldn't be disrespectful to me. And what we've got to do is find our best way to find our calm, to get to the calm. And what we need to do is just try to really understand what their message is. It doesn't mean you can't set limits and boundaries about how they're speaking to you or treating you. You have to do that. But we don't parent them the way we did when they were 7. When they're teenagers, there's a different approach. We're getting ready to let them experience the world. So we have to walk alongside of them a lot more than we ever did, not for them, alongside of them. And so if we cannot access that part of our brain to make decisions, and we're not taking care of ourselves in those moments, then we're certainly not modeling it for them. And we're certainly not helping them the best way that we can. So the two parts here is I'm going to say we need to take care of ourselves better. And we need to start giving them a voice and teaching them how to use it respectfully in a way that's going to ask them to get their own needs met. So really, there's a couple things that you can do simply. Whatever you got to do to find one thing that will help you get calm in a moment of conflict, or that you know that it's going to lead there, you've got to find a way to do that. There's nothing that's getting resolved unless you get there. No matter what your teen is doing, if you're not there, nothing positive is going to happen, right? So that's the first thing. We got to find that just one thing that just gets you to find your calm. It might be like escaping the room or escaping mentally, or whatever you've got to do. And the other thing is we've got, again, give your teen their voice, teaching them how to use it and understand how their brain is working. So that part of the brain, you probably heard this before, that prefrontal cortex, that part of their brain where it's decision-making, problem-solving, organization, trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future based on their results or the choices now. It's not as advanced as us, and they don't have the same life experience as us. So we typically do that a little better. We make decisions a little bit better because we get to find our calm, and then we can access that part of our brain. They are still working on that. It is a developmental stage of life that they have a disadvantage at, but it doesn't mean that they can't. So just focus there about meeting your own needs, and then asking them, helping them to ask for what they need.
I like to hear it. I want to just like build on that, because one of the ways I like to describe what Charlie was saying is the fact that where our kids are now, remember back when they were babies and they were learning to walk. And when they were learning to walk, they weren't very good at it. They were falling over and toddling and doing all this stuff, right? They had to keep practicing to get better. Now, when they were learning to walk, what did we do as parents? We encouraged them. We were like, you got one step, yay. We didn't yell at them when they fell down. I don't think so, right? We weren't like, you yelled down, you fell down, you did it wrong. But now that our kids are teenagers, their walking is learning to use that prefrontal cortex. It's learning how to regulate their emotions. It's learning how to problem solve. It's learning how to empathize. They're trying to do it, and they need to do it, and they're not going to be good at it. They're going to keep falling down. But we have this no preconceived notion that they should be good at it. And if they're not good at it, something's wrong with them. And so we focus on, you fell down. Why'd you fall down? You did it wrong. You're punished for doing it wrong. When we should be going, well, I hate the word should, but when we really would like to say, hey, over there, look at, you did it well that time. That's what I was saying. That's great. Oh, okay. The way you said that right now, I hear that you're trying to say something. It sounds like you're really angry. The way you're saying it, I personally feel a little disrespected by that. So I'm not understanding. Let's work on another way to say it. It's not a flaw in who they are. It's that they haven't learned how to do it well, and it's up to us to help them learn.
So Cam, in that respect, and I think Charlie, you talked a little bit about that too, is, you know, the 0 to 10 can happen really quickly, and we can be in that 10, and it is, you know, coming back down is so much harder than ramping up to 10. So we, as you know, as a parent, when I'm at the 10, my kid is at a 10, we are screaming, we're yelling, we're crying, there's no communication happening. Help me, how do I best de-escalate at that point? Because, you know, even for myself, it's a difficult walk back, right? But obviously it's not productive. So
Right.
How do we deal with those outbursts and those moments of really that uncontrollable, maybe anger or rage that might be happening? And we know it's not productive, but we're there too.
So I would love, Charlie, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with just kind of giving a little brief explanation of why it's so important to stay calm. And then I'd love to pass it over to you, Charlie, because you're really good at providing some actual techniques for doing that. Does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what Val is saying happens a lot because our kids trigger us. And we've had a long, tough day and we're exhausted, and they've shown the same behavior over and over again. And we've had to remind them 100 times to do the same thing. And why can't they just do it? And it's just all of a sudden it all explodes, right? And they get frustrated and they start being disrespectful. And we're like, you're not talking to me like that. And that gets us loaded. So let's go back to the brain, right? So we were just talking about the prefrontal cortex, which between the ages of 14 and 25, that's developing and creating those connections and getting good. What is very well developed at this point, though, is the amygdala, where the fight or flight is. So that's the part of the brain that's going emergency, emergency, I'm going to do something and protect myself. Kids are experiencing the world through that amygdala, through that part of the brain, which means when they see danger, they get alerted very fast, which is why they go 0 to 10 or 0 to 60, it feels like, right? Because they don't have that emotion regulation that we have. So they're up there and they'll be all over the place. And it's harder for them to come back down. So if we want to have a reasonable discussion and we want them to get through this temper or meltdown or anything else, when we pile on our emotions on top of this, I liken it to pressing the gas while yelling at them to stop. And you're just flooring it and you're saying, stop, they can't. We're making it impossible for them to stop. So if we want to have a rational, calm conversation, the only person in that dynamic that has the ability to do that is you, the adult. So it is up to you to be the calm. And the reason you want to be calm is because you're going to model being calm to them. Because if you're always getting upset too, well, now they're saying, well, the model is when I'm upset, I lose it. So we want to show when we model, we're calmed down. And then when we're calmed down, we're allowing them through it, because we can't just tell them to stop. Emotions don't just stop. You got to help them through it. So if we're not adding more to it, if we're not throwing fuel onto it, they're gonna be able to slow down and calm down much faster than if we're yelling at them to calm down. So Charlie, I'm gonna throw it to you because you're like the pro of calming people down, including me.
Yeah, why is it so hard for me to calm myself down sometimes with my own kids? Come on. All right, yeah, definitely have some thoughts here. I had to write some down so I wouldn't forget it. All right. So I always say, even as a teacher, even in the role you're in now, as a parent, I say this to my own kids and to the students I taught: find an escape space. So you could be in the car and your kid is yelling, because that happens often. And you're like, I can't escape that. No, but you can tell yourself some thoughts and your space is there, right? That's your space. It's hard. I've been there. We all have. Sometimes you're at home. Sometimes you're at the store. Wherever you are, find an escape space. And if you can't find a physical escape space, your calm is your escape space. So you go to literally, like when I did trauma work, you guys you've heard of this before, writing out, like drawing out a mental, like happy place. That really is an escape space that you could go to at any time, even if you have a lot of stuff going on around you. You can get good at it. It's one tool. Okay. The other thing you can do is tell them that this is, and I know I'm stopping myself because I know that you can't reason with your kid at this time, but what you can say calmly as best as you can: this is not working. We're going to come back to this in 10 minutes. The best thing you could say is, when can we come back to this? Put it on them, ask them when. If they can't give you a time, then you set the boundary. You say, we can come back to this in 10 minutes. And then leave if you can, or stop and be quiet and truly wait for 10 minutes and then revisit it. Okay. Another thing that you could do is, by the way, you have to follow through with that. Make sure you follow through. I always say, no matter what, no matter how big their emotion is, even if your emotions are big, ask them what they need. Say, what do you need? And what I do is, when that emotion's really big, repeat that. They'll be big. What do you need? Blah, 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 blah. What do you need? Repeat that a few times. It can work. And then it validates what their need is, and it lets them advocate for themselves. It's a huge tool for them. And then there's just two other things. Number one, make sure we validate how they're feeling. We're not judging how they're feeling. We're validating. Gosh, you seem so frustrated about this right now. That is a really frustrating thing. Doesn't mean you're agreeing with them. You're validating how they're feeling about something that might be perceived to them as a threat. Maybe not to you, but to them it's perceived as a threat. And we've got to close our mouths much more and just listen. We got to listen. We got to listen. So I will say there are many people who cannot do, who feel like they cannot get to any of these things. And I'm going to validate you right now and say that's okay. It's okay. I've been there too. Then you need to go see somebody to get help so that you can mitigate that for yourself, so that you can show up to yourself and other people better. And that's where I'll stop for now.
Well, thank you. Great advice. I'm glad that you talked about drawing that safe space, because that's an exercise that we take the teams through the workshop, is creating their cave of calm, right? What is that safe space look like? What are the things that are in it? What does it look like? What are the things that they bring into their cave of calm? So yeah, great exercise. I think this might be a great spot to just do some questions from our audience. We do have a few that have been sent in, but does anybody have any questions that they want to just pop into the chat so we can just take a minute and make sure that we're answering your questions as well? Or you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. No? Okay. Well, we will go ahead and continue with a question that I did has popped up on a couple of different programs that we've done, and that is panic attacks. Your teen has anxiety or has a tendency to have a panic attack. As a parent, how do we support them through that so that it's doing more help than harm?
So I'll start, and then I know, again, Cam will be amazing at this. She works with teens all the time who need this support, so she'll give some great information. I will say that it's important to understand what it really is. We need to properly label it. Let's not self-diagnose or diagnose our teens with anxiety. It is a disorder. Or there's regular, like typical anxiety that we all experience. So we don't want to disorder it if it hasn't been diagnosed. I will always say that, because what happens is that shows up a little differently. And we also need to understand where it's coming from. So what are your kids' patterns around anxiety? What makes them anxious? And if you are concerned, take them to a doctor and get them assessed properly so we can get the proper get everything in place that needs to support them and their needs, because something's going off for them. There's a few different things going on in the brain. Number one, there could be a past trauma that is looping in their subconscious mind that is triggered by some external factor or internal thought that they are having. And so sometimes they have no idea what that is. So if your teen says, I don't know what's wrong, you need to believe them, because they don't. And don't judge them for that, and don't make them try to figure it out. So that, just be cautious about the language we have around it is the one thing I will say. And then there are lots of different tools. I'm going to show you like one little one I did with students all the time when I got good at connecting with them and knowing that some had anxiety disorder, so they had a plan around that. But also, if they seemed on edge, or just there was a shift in their affect and the way they looked, and I knew something was coming, I would do something so simple. You guys can all do this right now. I would just have them pinch the ends of their fingertips. It is a good sensory move that distracts their brain and their feelings. And what happens is you can talk with them while they're doing this, and talk very calm and very slow and very smooth, and have them repeat a question or repeat a song lyric or the ABCs to calm them. It is one of tons of strategies. Find out what works for your kid. Cam, I know you deal with this a lot. Go
Well, I think it is really important to find what works for your kid. I think one thing to realize with the anxiety or panic attacks is that it is coming from that amygdala. It's that fight or flight survival mode that's just jumping in. So there's no reason. So if we go into a panic attack trying to reason with them and it's all okay, they're not going to hear you. They're just going to feel like you don't understand. So it's really important to sit with them, be there with them, and let them go through it. And know it sucks to sit there with them when they're struggling, but they need to work through it. We can't get it to end faster by saying it's okay, stop, because that actually adds more panic. Val's laughing because she told me a story about doing that. But we want it to stop so badly. We feel so bad about it. But what we need to do is just validate with them. It's okay. We put words to their feelings and we let them express those feelings. And we say, we hear you. You've got it. We're not going to leave you. And let them work through that emotion. And then when they get to that, through that, and they calm down because you're staying calm and you're with them through it, then you do have those techniques like Charlie said. Another one, if they're really struggling, we want to interrupt that brain pattern. So another one is just having them hold ice, because that shock of the senses will shock it, right? What we want to do, and I liken it to when you're riding a bike and you put a stick in it and all of a sudden the spokes stop and you just like fly over. We want to do that to the brain, because this is what's happening to the brain when they're in a panic attack, right? So we need to throw something. So the ice will stop it, or just breaking through the senses. People know the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When you say 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 2 things, 3, you know that. When you go through that, the reason it works so well, and I love doing this with kids, because I'll have them go through it. And afterwards I say, so what were you thinking during that? And they'll be like, oh, I wasn't thinking about what I was just stressing about. I'm like, I know. They're like, that was so cool. That's happened to me with many kids. And this is a good one for you guys too. So it's 5 things I see, 4 things I feel against my body, 3 things I hear, 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. Go through that and you're done. So it's different things, and they like that better than breathing, because breathing tends to stress them out. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stop it. And then we just validate. We're not trying to fix it, because it's a panic attack. There's nothing to fix. Then a lot of times anxiety, what I see with anxiety is anxiety comes because we're worried about something that might happen in the future and we don't know what to do about it. And we're freaked out. So one of the things I like to do with my clients is we'll sit there and say, okay, what are you worried about? Well, I'm worried about walking into class and tripping and my books go everywhere. And everyone keeps telling me that's not going to happen. And that doesn't make me less stressed. We go, okay, you're going to go in, you trip, your books go everywhere. What do? What's your plan when that happens? The zombies come to your door and you're freaked out. Okay, we don't say the zombies aren't coming. We say, okay, what do? What are you going to grab? And we figure out a plan. And when they have a plan, guess what happens? They don't have to be as anxious about it, because now they know what to do.
Yeah, and I would love to add too, because Cam, those are so practical, and parents, we can all relate to them. If you use those strategies for yourself at the same time, not only are you benefiting from calming down yourself or feeling in a safer space, you can, you're modeling, you're constantly modeling. And to be honest, when I hear that sometimes, like, I am so sick of modeling this stuff for my kids, I'm struggling too, right? I give you permission to admit that, and that mutual vulnerability, be honest, like you can say, this is a struggle for me too. I'm trying so hard to support you and I'm not sure what to do sometimes. And it's okay to say that, but never, ever tell them that you won't stick with them. Like, always say, I don't even know what to do right now, but I'm with you. I got you. Like, I may not fix you, and that's okay, because we're going to sit in this together. That is huge for them. It's huge. And let them sit in discomfort. We want to wash all their pain and discomfort away. Don't do that, because they need to learn to manage those painful feelings that they're going to endure their whole life.
Well, and I want to kind of build on that too, Charlie. Those painful feelings, when we try to always fix them and we try to brush over them and we try to suppress them, we don't make those feelings ever go away. We just make it feel like it's not okay to ever express them. And that's when we get kids punching through walls or cutting themselves or doing things where that anger and that sadness and that feeling is still in there and they don't know how to get it out. So we want to give them permission to express their bad feelings. We want them to help them label it. We want to validate it. We want to let them feel it, because they need to feel it. And we need to let them know that we've got sadness and anger and frustration and fears too. Because if we always model, oh, we've got our stuff together, then we're giving them an unfair model, and they think, oh, well, mom and dad always have it together, so something's wrong with me if I don't. And then we give them this expectation. And when they become teens, you'll notice self-confidence often goes down, this sense of fear and anxiety goes up. And it's because there's separation between now. They've noticed, because they're getting more critical thinking, they're noticing the difference between the ideal up here and what they really are. And if they see you as this ideal, nothing ever bothers them, well, that's another huge gap they're looking at every day going, I'm not enough. I don't live up to that. So we need to let them know that where they're at is absolutely okay.
We got a question in the chat that is relates to what you were talking about, and that is, the meltdown that becomes, the temper tantrum with the throwing and those things. And when you're, it looks like a 28-year-old guardian who needs to help in the situation, what advice would you give to them to help that 12-year-old de-escalate that temper tantrum that you can become violent?
I would, and Kim, you'll have great ideas for this. The one thing I will just say is, when things are okay, ask that 12-year-old what they think they need in that moment, so that you can prepare for that moment. But Kim, I know you'll have some great advice here too. Go ahead.
No, I think that's a really, really good thing when they're calm, because when they're in that tantrum, trying to reason with them, like we've said, not going to happen. They're not in reason place, right? And we're getting triggered and worried and freaked out too. What I want to make clear is that behavior is a symptom of something going on. That is their defense mechanism. That is their best way of trying to voice what's going on. They don't know how to do it. So we want to separate that behavior out from the kid. The kid is not a problem child. How they're coping is not functional. It's not the effective way to cope. So let's separate that out and going, what are they trying to cope with? What's the problem? And how can we give them better coping techniques, or even better, how do we give them a voice so that they can get what they need? And then that works. We also, Charlie just said, our language is so important, and it is one thing, example, when they're going through this, rather than saying what's wrong, ask them what's going on. What's going on? The difference is wrong, we've tainted it to something's wrong with you, to what's going on. What do they need to vocalize? Another one is help me understand, because that sets it up for, I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to try to fix it. I'm not going to try to tell you that you're incorrect. I'm just going to listen to what you have to say. And when you're listening to them, often the kids that are throwing tantrums, that's why they're throwing tantrums, is because they don't feel heard. And that's the only thing they can do to get someone to pay attention and listen.
Yeah, and we've got to also mention, it's so often there. The listening seems so basic, but we got to do better. All of us, every single person, right? That's not a, you should do this, you have to do this. This is just, this will make it better. This will make society better if we all become better listeners. I will say too, if a 12-year-old maybe has some kind of past that you know about, you're aware of, that there was some trauma back then. By the way, we all have some kind of trauma. Some just emerge as different behaviors because our bodies are remembering that trauma and it's responding. It's all attached, right? It all stays in that subconscious mind and through your brainstem and out to your nervous system. That's where it goes. You get sick to your stomach. Well, that's the vagus nerve is there. I mean, look up polyvagal theory. There's so much connection to our mind, body, and spirit for a reason. So I will suggest, if that's there, I always suggest getting trauma-specific therapy if you know there is a trauma, because there's a special way to process the trauma. And EMDR is actually really good. And there's a lot of other techniques, but go to somebody who specializes in trauma-specific therapy to process the trauma. And then let them go to somebody like Dr. Kim, who they can then just learn how to adapt with the difficulties of life every day. right? Once that trauma is processed, then they should be speaking, they could be speaking to somebody who can really help them mitigate life.
Thank you, Charlie. This conversation is, I mean, we could go all night, and I know that we need to be respectful to the time that we do have. So in those outbursts, when a child talks about self-harm and suicide, are they doing it for attention? Are they doing it because they mean it? When a child makes those statements, how should a parent react?
Do you want to go first, Cam?
I will just say one thing: always take it seriously. Even if you are 99.99% sure that they are faking it, I don't think that 0.01% is worth the risk. And also, if they're faking it and saying it, then there's a reason why. And that's pretty important too. If they were going to the extreme of having to say and threaten, I'm committing suicide, I'm gonna take my life, or I'm gonna hurt myself. So you always want to take it seriously. You also want to address it directly. This is not, I think a lot of parents are very afraid, a lot of people are very afraid of asking the flat out question: are you planning on hurting yourself? Ask it. It doesn't plant the idea in their head. They're not going to suddenly go, oh, I wasn't, but now I will. No, but if they were, it's going to show that you are actually paying attention. And when they say that, and if they say yes, you take that seriously. And then you ask them, do you have a plan? What are you planning on doing? And if they tell you, then it's definitely very serious if they thought about it. And you go and you remove those things from the house, you stay directly with them and you believe them and you listen to them, you let them know that they matter, and you sit there and make sure that they know you care, which you do. And the problem here is your whole head is going to be screaming. Your inside of your head is going to be screaming. You're going to be so afraid and so freaked out and going through everything in your head and blaming it on yourself and all these worries. And what I want, I can say, don't be, be calm. You're not going to be, but I want you to just realize it's okay that you're not calm, because this is really terrifying. I think it's the most terrifying thing a parent can hear. And realize and be okay with that. And just say, you know what my child needs right now is me to be here. And this is the best thing I can do for them, is to sit there with them. And if it gets to that point where you're really afraid, call and get help. Call 911, call the hotline, suicide hotline, take them into an emergency room, make sure you're getting them help.
Yeah, if we have a teen, if you have a teen if you have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, have the number of a crisis line near you. Just have it, just memorize it. You don't know if it's going to be your kid or another person's kid. Again, we do not want to parent in isolation, especially on the topic of self-harm or suicide. We don't want to ever do that alone. And so you can call that number. Make sure you understand where that number is and how to get there, because they'll guide you. Because when we're shut down, we don't know what to do. And if we don't know what to do, often we just do nothing. And the worst thing you can do, if you believe that your child is suicidal or is thinking about self-harm, or has these as a pattern of behavior in these big emotions, then you do not want to do nothing. That's the worst we can do, right? We've got to feel like we can do something. So call a crisis line. I've done it many times with my students. I've had many of those conversations. And I'm going to go back to the question around the attention. Yes, they're looking for attention, but let's not judge that attention. So I can't tell you, thank you for putting that National Suicide Prevention up there. Thank you. Everybody write that down somewhere so that sometime when you need it, you don't have to go looking for it. I will say this, I've had many teenagers come to me and complain about a friend of theirs. Oh my gosh, they talk about harming themselves all the time, or they talk about they're gonna, they have suicidal thoughts all the time, and it's driving me crazy. They just want attention. I'm like, yeah, they do, and they need it. They need it. What happens is it becomes irritating to us because we're judging that, but every behavior is telling some kind of message. Even little kids, in schools, when we teach them about trauma, they're getting mislabeled and misguided. So if we're labeling them and we're misguiding them, we're not really doing what we could be doing to truly help them. So again, don't do this by yourself. Ask the question. We're giving you permission right now to ask, are you thinking suicide? Are you going to harm yourself? If so, and calm, just like this. You might be feeling that inside, but are you going to? How? Have you thought about how you're going to do it? If they give you details of that, figure out, do they have access to that? If they're telling you the details of how they might do that, and you know that they can access what they just said to you, people ask me all the time, I don't want to go take them to the hospital. And what? Take them to the hospital. Take them every time to the hospital if you need to. 1, you're not doing this alone. 2, you're with professionals. And 3, we have to stop being so afraid of getting medical help, so that people don't think we're failing or that there's judgment or that we're going to lose our kids to the system. It's never, ever about that. People are there to take care of your kid. So every time if you need to take them, it does a couple things. Number 1, you're not doing this alone then. It is a scary thing. And the other thing is, then you're actually doing something about it when you don't know what to do. You're doing something about it with people who deal with this all the time. I know there's a big conversation around this. There's much more to say, but if there's maybe a direct question that anybody would have, or Val, if you wanted to ask something else, it's a big topic.
It is. It's a very big topic, and thank you for sharing. The resources and the crisis line and the text line, et cetera. Yeah, doing something is better than doing nothing. So I know we're kind of running out of time, so I just want to put another request for any additional questions that we may have. Go ahead and pop those into the chat, and we'll do our very best to get to all your questions. I do want to touch unfortunately, just because of the time, and I think if we go over, I think people will be okay with that, is grief. Dealing with, and I apologize, work from home, there's dogs barking, so I'm really sorry. Let's talk about grief. Because, and I think that there's lots of grief that we can talk about. We can talk about the loss of a parent, or the loss of a friend, or the loss of, a relative. But there's also grief, especially in this post-pandemic environment, of loss of, time, loss of events. And teens are not necessarily given the book on how to deal with grief. And parents need resources when kids come home and ask about the loss of a friend or the loss of a family member. How do we talk to teens about grief?
I'm going to say the first thing we want to do is we want to talk about the grief. We don't want to brush it under the rug or ignore it or belittle or whatever, because I know it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. And it brings up so many hard emotions, probably within us too. But one of the most important things we have to do with grief is to get it out and talk about it and validate it and make sure that we listen to what they're worried about. And ask your kids, what are they thinking? What are they struggling with about it? What's going on? Ask them about what they remember about the person, right? Talk about, if they lost a person, talk about the person. If they lost something like the ability to be able to go to, their soccer tryouts because it was, I missed 2 years of it. That's mourning, right? There's grief there of what I didn't get to go to prom because there was COVID. Like, if it is something that they sincerely grieve, it's sincerely worth grieving for them. It may not seem that important or big to you. It's very big for them. So let them feel that grief, talk about the grief, talk about what they're sad about, and let them know that you're there for them and it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, Cam said something really important. We don't want to impose our stuff on other people. The less we do that, the better we'll function as a society. and stop making assumptions. And we just don't want to impose our beliefs and our feelings and our experiences and our judgments on others, because there's no space to connect that way. So when we experience grief, or when we have people or kids who are experiencing grief, the validation is huge, and not to judge them, and not to, let them feel their feelings. Any of that trauma work I've done on any level with kids, whether it's the little traumas or the big traumas, it's still letting people sit with the feeling and give them tools to deal with the feeling. One of the biggest things I did that was so quick and easy, and Cam, you've heard me say this many times, is I literally have people put their hand over their hearts when they're feeling it. There's a lot of, there's some science around heart math and the energy and stuff, but it's really about the self-compassion work I did with people. Is sometimes we grieve over decisions we've made. And I just say, when you're feeling that way, just put your hand over your heart and feel that, and notice where it shows up in your body. Notice, is it showing up, is your jaw tight? Just notice, because when we identify it, we humanize ourselves, and we can have self-compassion that way. And the other thing, again, there's a lot here, but we moved countries this year. I mean, I had 2 young kids that transitioned from another country to a whole new school system, and they grew up there, and they had to meet all new friends, and they grieved. And my youngest, he was 8 at the time. I sit with him down on his level. Do this with your teens too. Don't hover over them. Sit down on their level with them. Get down on their level still. I know they tower over you.
I was gonna say, or get up on a step stool.
No, right. But like if they're sitting down on a couch, don't hover over them. Sit with them. Get right. But I got down on my kid, and I'm like, I know it hurts. I bet you miss them. And that's it. I didn't try to fix that hurt. Just let them sit there, and I was with them. So that connection is huge too.
Yeah, I think 2 more things is a hug. Hug goes a long, long way when it comes to grief. A nice, if they're comfortable with it, a nice long hug. And then also helping them maybe find an outlet. Like if they love to write songs, or they like to journal, or they like to draw, maybe just have them draw something for that person, or draw something to just show their sadness or what they miss about it, and just let them find a way to express that feeling in another way, so it's getting outside of here.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes, we all grieve in different ways, but sometimes it manifests in like physical ailments. Just notice that if you take that kid to the doctor, or you go to the doctor and you're grieving over something, it might, when I lost my sister friend to cancer in 2015, I had to show up and start teaching a whole new 9th grade class like 3 days later. And she asked me to do her eulogy on the way to her last chemo appointment that I drove her to. And I realized at that moment, wow, she's asking me there. So I knew that I was going to lose her. And I didn't have time to grieve. So what would happen is it showed up in my body, and I would have like my leg hurt. So I went to the doctor, and I'm like, something's going on with my leg. And eventually somebody just said to me, you're grieving. Like you're not grieving emotionally, like it's showing up in your body. So we're all different with how we grieve. Again, don't impose the way they should be grieving. Don't do that to them. Just notice that if your kid is showing some other symptoms of something, notice it might be grief.
Unmute. We did get a few more. Thank you, Charlie. We did get some questions popping into the chat that I'm just going to run through really quick. How do you know when your child needs therapy, intensive, inpatient? How does the parent know that?
Go ahead, Cam.
I was going to say, I think first of all, if your child, as a parent, you're probably going to know. If you're feeling like they might, it's probably because they might. I would also ask your child. I have a lot of kids that will come and they've gone to their parents, or their parents have said, do you want to talk to somebody? And they've said, yes, I want to talk to somebody. And if they say that, you want to find somebody. And I love when people might go check out a few different people and see who does that child feel the most comfortable with, because more than anything else, that child needs to feel comfortable with a person to be able to feel safe and to share those things. And I would just start there and saying, do you need to talk? And if they go and talk to somebody and it seems like, wow, this is something that needs more inpatient, that person's going to help you discover that and help you find connections with that to take it to that next level. So I would just start with, I want somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ask
Um,
them.
I'm going to jump to the next question, Charlie. Suggestions on helping a 17-year-old cope with growing up, the stress of losing structure of high school, avoiding driving, getting a license, disconnecting with friends, and the aging out of prior groups and activities.
Yeah, so I'll keep it really simple. Teach them about their brain. Tell them why they're feeling the way they are and why they're making decisions the way they are. Teach them about their own brain. And then give them permission to feel those discomforts. It's okay to be uncomfortable through those things because they're going to happen. And to find tools and strategies that work for them, empower them to decide which works best for them, and help them use it when things are okay, so that they'll be able to tap into it a lot later. And I always say about therapy, if they need it, I think everybody could benefit from talking to the right person, and we parents need to let our kids find someone else to talk to. It's not always going to be us, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think with a 17-year-old too, allowing them, again, this is grief. It is grief. It's grieving over your childhood and the things that you used to be able to do, and the fear of adulting coming around the corner. So let them do that, but also encourage them, not in a, hey, don't ignore that, think of this, but encourage them to think about what are the cool things about being 17. What do you like about being able to drive? What is cool about being able to get your own job, or the freedoms? What do you have to look forward to? This is that practice of gratitude, and the practice of gratitude and everything we've just talked about is another really powerful thing to help our kids learn how to do. It's not something they just do on their own. I've worked with kids, like Bob was saying, in the group, and one of the exercises we do is a gratitude, and a lot of kids will just go around and say, what are you grateful for? And they're like, I never thought about that. Like, they just never thought about it. But when we practice gratitude, it can be really small things. I'll have them just look at something in the room and say, what are you grateful for that chair? Right? Something really easy. But when they practice gratitude, it retrains the brain, and you can't feel anxious and grateful at the same time. So if we're practicing gratitude, those are moments when our brain, it has a break from anxiety, and we start getting better and better at building those connections of gratitude.
Thank you, Cam. This is a topic that we covered a little bit a few months ago, and I'll read you the question verbatim. My son's anxiety comes from a heavy schoolwork. He's a high achiever and always wants to do well. What happens is if he has a huge project that's due, instead of working on it, he takes time to relax and for himself, and then goes overboard and loses the time for the task, the school task. For him, it's not procrastination, but I don't know how to help him manage his anxieties, calm down. I don't know what it's called, but it hurts to see him struggle and have all these anxieties about school, loss of sleep, etc.
Me, not talking to you or the child or your child, my first hearing this, the first thing that occurred to me is there's some fear of failure there, which a lot of times when we see kids that push themselves really hard and also kind of do this, it is a bit of procrastination, right? Of breaks, taking some time before they do it. There's so much pressure on them to succeed. And when you talk to kids about success, there's not a lot of room for error. It's either you get it 100% right or you suck. You either win or you're a loser. And it's like, there's no room for being human. There's no room for error. There's no room for learning and growth for mistakes. It's just, you got to do it. And so I think part of this is really opening up the conversation and looking at the effort, focusing on giving them opportunities and allowing them to fail in places where it might be scary to let them, but allowing them that space where there's no repercussions for failure. It's more of a, okay, now what do we do? How do we learn from that? How do we grow from that? So that fear of tackling something and not doing it perfectly, we start removing that. And this is not just kids, this is adults. We see a lot of this in today's society. We are terrified of making a mistake because we're told over and over again, you can't make a mistake. And we've got to be okay saying, you know what, mistakes are amazing, because mistakes and errors show that you pushed yourself beyond your comfort zone and you're growing. Woohoo! Let's celebrate that. So I would love to start encouraging that more.
We
Thanks,
do a whole
Cam.
set. So, oh no, Val, you probably have to move on because of time, right? It's totally fine.
Well, yeah, we got an active chat, so I've got lots of questions popping up. So I hope you're okay just hanging on for just a few more minutes.
Sure.
I'm concerned with my daughter developing an eating disorder.
Yeah, and I saw you mention that, Charlotta. I hope I say that right. It's so pretty. I would need to know more information about that. I wonder if she has any awareness about this, and what are you seeing? What are you noticing that might be different from what she was doing before? I always try to really avoid the assumptions, although I'm sure you have some really good factors going on there. But here's what I always go back to a couple of different things. Number one, connect with her, ask her, how are you doing? What do you need? I'm noticing this. I'm curious about this, not accusatory, just asking, right? We're not making the assumptions. We're asking, I noticed this. Can you tell me about that? Are you worried? Do you have any concerns? And I wouldn't even say, are you worried? Because then you're kind of putting stuff in her head that way. And then seek out more resources about this, because you don't want to do this alone. So make the connection with your daughter to find out more in a curious way, and then seek out some more information about it to see what you can do next, based on what she tells you. And certainly reach out to get some help with people who deal with eating disorders so that you can get some more information when talking with your daughter too. So,
Charlotta, eating disorders, we start seeing a lot of, because again, kids are looking at that ideal state versus where they're at. And there's a lot of distortion when it comes to body image, and especially now with lovely filters. We see all these people that pose, and so they think, oh my gosh, I have to look this way to be okay. And so they start comparing who they are with what they think they need to be. So part of that is also having very open conversations about filters and, how people edit photos and things like that, and what's realistic. So they start getting a realistic view of what adult bodies look like, being able to learn what they appreciate about their body, making sure that around the house that the focus, because I know this is big, because our generation was very much focused. I know growing up, diet and weight and what you look like was very big, and that was constantly fed into us. And so it's making sure that those conversations, even about yourself, aren't had, right? You're making sure that what you're saying and how you're eating and the foods you're eating are about being healthy and not about weight. And sometimes that's really hard, and we'll catch ourselves saying, oh my gosh, I look fat in these pants. And they're like, okay, that's what message is that sending our kids? So it's some of those things around there. But if you believe, and it sounds like you really do, I definitely would find somebody for her to talk to and work through those, because those are distortions that she's starting to have about herself.
Yeah, this is a perception issue for sure. So cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, would be a really good tool that therapists use, or if they specialize in that, that'd be helpful. But certainly if they specialize in eating disorders, that'd be ideal. But seek this out. Don't do this on your own.
Another question is a 12-year-old with past history of trauma and abuse, has had some self-harming behaviors and was taken to a facility where she did not qualify for inpatient care. She's seeing a counselor. What other resources do you have for trauma care?
There's tons out there, because there's so much new information on this. There are many people, but go to people who have studied this. I am a proponent, learn everything you can, so you can use the same language of people that are working with your daughter, or your son. There's just, when we know more, we can use the same language and communicate better. But I will say this, it's always like noticing the patterns, like noticing what's going on. If there's a history of self-harm, when has that happened? Like, are there certain situations that's happened? So try to address it ahead of time and look for ways to kind of be preventative. And I know this wasn't directly the question, but one of the things we used to do with the kids who lived in residence when they self-harmed, we had them cover their own wounds and clean their own wounds. Well, we were loving. We didn't do it in a judgmental way. We never judged them, but we didn't do that for them. So we had them do that independently. And there are some strategies around that people who work with kids who self-harm or trauma past backgrounds. Again, it's about understanding the brain and how it's showing up in the body and why we're doing what we're doing because of the trauma. So I feel like I'm saying it so quickly and there's a lot more to say, but go ahead, Cam, please.
There is, and I was just going to say self-harm it's as a parent, it is terrifying to see. I think it's important to understand why kids self-harm, and there's a few different reasons, but a lot of times, we worry, we worry that it's tied to suicide. And a lot of times self-harm is more about either trying to feel better, believe it or not, because cutting can create and release endorphins. And so if kids are feeling really sad, or sometimes I hear not feeling anything at all, they'll cut themselves because then they feel something. So cutting is actually a coping mechanism more than it is a self-infliction punishment often. So I think it's it's helpful to understand why they're cutting. And you can do this simply by giving them space, letting them tell you how they're feeling without any judgment. It's going to be hard. Like Charlie said, helping them clean their wounds and just say, let's go clean the wounds. And as we do this, help me understand what you're feeling.
Always soothing and a place of curiosity. Be curious about it.
And I think probably we're going to wrap up. I think this might be our last question. And it's another, what if your child refuses to stay in therapy or refuses to go or leave the house?
Oh my gosh, I dealt with this all the time. Cam, go ahead, because you talk to kids all the time too.
Well, I was just going to say, if your child refuses to go to therapy, there's not a lot the therapist can do, I hate to say, because the child really needs to participate. But here's one thing that I want to encourage you: if your child wants help, one of the main reasons I see kids resistant to therapy is because the way that they hear it may not be the way you're phrasing it, but the way they hear it is, you are broken, something's wrong with you, you need to change, you're not okay the way you are, I'm disappointed in you, someone needs to fix you. And nobody wants to go to somebody to be told that they're not okay. So one of the things I do a lot because I'll work with parents and the kids, is if their kids don't want to go, I work with the parents, because guess what? The parents are there every day. And if the parents have the skills to be able to support their kids, that's even more powerful than a professional, if they're able to learn to listen. And then I can bring the kids in, because the way we phrase it is, hey, I'm working with your parents. Can I get your insight into how things are going or to how you're feeling? And when they come to me with that, I'm telling you, even the kids, the parents are like, oh, they won't talk to you. They talk a lot and they share a lot, because they're like, oh, this person just wants to hear my perspective. And so a lot of wanting help depends on how you are approaching it.
Yeah. And allow them to choose who they want to talk to, but usually they'll choose, like so many people I know go to Cam. They go to Dr. Cam because Cam, she's a teen trans leader. She not only can she tell adults what their teens are kind of thinking, what about their behavior, but she does something very simple and she really does hear them. And that makes them want to keep coming back for more. So if we can just reach out to people who want to hear us, or allow them to talk to somebody who will just hear them, that is so powerful.
Well, we have exceeded our time commitment, and I think we've gotten through most of our questions. So I just want to say another big thank you to Charlie and to Cam for giving such great insight into parenting teens and helping us be better parents. I do want to we will share resources via email tomorrow with all the attendees and you all, with, how to reach out to Cam and to Charlie. and additional community resources that we have. So we certainly you'll get that in an email tomorrow. You'll also be able to watch the replay of this video if for any reason you'd like to do that. I do want to talk about our next parental panel. That's going to be on April 28th, and where we're going to focus on the positive impact of volunteerism and what volunteering, what giving back does for mental health. So and how doing it as a family can really be a great way to connect with your teens. So I hope you can join us on the 28th for the next panel. So thank you all so much, and we'll look forward to having you back with us on April 28th. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.